So the idea that the Lord is speaking to me from last year's Revelation, from Revelation chapter 1, is that there are changes that need to happen to the churches that I am overseeing. And the Lord said, I want you to, he said, he gave the report card, and he showed me where the challenges are, and he said to me, you need to work. I said, Lord, but how? What do I work with? There has to be a perfect template, isn't it? There has to be a fantastic template for me to see what my churches should become like. And then God took me, of course, we are doing the book of Acts, left, right, center, every now and then, and God took me to the church of Antioch. Now, Antioch is an amazing story. I don't know how you see it, but I'm hoping that as we speak today, you would start to enjoy the story of Antioch. There is no other church that is mentioned, whose story is mentioned, from being pagan to be a powerfully missional church. And as we see and look at this church, it gives us a template onto what we need to work so that we can see our report card, look at this amazing, beautiful church, and kind of work on those areas. That's what I'm working with. That's what we are going to do over the next 2 years. So these three scriptures, I don't need you to open to it. I will overview it very fast. These three scriptures talks about the beginning of the church at Antioch. Antioch was a pagan place, third popular city in the whole empire of Rome. Was very pagan, lots of temples, lots of crazy worship, and it's a trade center and things like that. And there were no churches there. And a couple of people, if you read Acts 8:1, it says that after the martyrdom of Stephen, there was severe persecution and people started to be scattered. Believers who believed in Jesus were moving away from Jerusalem to the ends of the world. And one such group that was running away for their life chose to continue to preach the gospel wherever they went. They came to Antioch. They first spoke to the Jews. Some of them were crazy. They went to the Gentiles. You must remember, it was a very early stage. For a Jew to go to a Gentile is difficult. But the Spirit was moving in a powerful way. Spirit spoke to Peter, and Peter went to Cornelius' house and preached the gospel. Philip was ministering to the eunuch. Things were happening very fast. And these people knew that the Gentiles needed the gospel, and they preached the gospel to the Gentiles, and people became believers there. Pagans became believers for the first time in the city of Antioch. And as those believers started to grow in number, the information went to Jerusalem, because Jerusalem was the main church at that time. And they sent an apostle to see that the work is established. Apostle Barnabas came and he established the work. What did he do? He brought these believers together. And formed what we call as a church. And that was the first presentation of the church in a pure Greco-Roman culture. The first, Gentile church that you can say. And for us, we being Gentiles, any Jew here, forgive me, but if we being Gentiles, if you were to say a mother church, you should go back to Antioch, because that was the place they were first called Christians. Now, I'm sure it was intentional on the part of the Spirit and on the part of Luke to write that statement that they were called Christians first there, because that was the beginning. And when I have to look at a template to kind of figure out how I need to deal with my report card, I think this is the place to go. And it's magnificent what has happened there. Now, if you come to Acts 11:19-30, and you see these people come, preach the gospel, Barnabas comes. Barnabas was a Jew, but he came there and it says he saw with the eye of grace that he accepted those Gentiles. And he recognized it is the work of the Spirit. And he accepts them. He brings them together. And he starts to teach them. But again it says, and it is repeated again statement there, and the Lord added more and more people. The work became very heavy. If it was me, I would not go and bring Paul. I would have taken all the glory to myself. He said, this is a beautiful work. I would have encashed on that. But what did this guy do? Amazing man of God. His character sketch is given there. It's brilliant to see what kind of a leader he was. He goes and gets Paul, brings him in. Of course, then Paul becomes bigger than him. And that's the ministry of Barnabas, to catapult people into the purposes and destiny of God. And he truly does that. And they two together did not leave Antioch. They stayed there and taught the church 1 full year. Now, how many of you want to know the curriculum? What was taught? Don't you think we need to figure that out? Because that was the first Gentile church. and two of the greatest apostles of the Christian history, and they taught for 1 full year. 1 full year. And that content would have been powerful. We will get to the content a little later. Now, as soon as the church is being taught, if you go down in that 19 down all the way, as they were being taught, the church was maturing. They were pagans. They became believers. They became a church, baby church, and that baby church started to mature. And one of the first few signs of maturity is they became a giving church. If you read the passage there, Agabus, a prophet, comes from Jerusalem. There seems to be an apostolic team, and one of them was a prophet. He comes into Antioch church, and he says there's going to be a famine. And what did they do when the prophecy came? They responded to the prophecy, and they were mature to recognize the voice of God. They responded to the prophecy. They gathered the funds. They gave it to Paul and Barnabas. Go to Jerusalem and give the money. When there is a prophecy over you, there is a expected response. Now, that's a beautiful church. So, pagan, small gathering, became a baby church, starting to mature, and the signs of maturity are so evident that they become a giving church. Now, second sign of maturity, we go to 13:1, and I like to read that because that's very interesting. Acts 13:1. Now they were in the church at Antioch. Now you must remember, you have jumped from 11:30 to 13:1. There's something else in between. We'll connect it later. But the story goes to Peter's side, and something's happened there. Now Luke is documenting it very interestingly. So you need to jump from 11:30 to 13:1. And 13:1 says, now there were in the church at Antioch, probably about 3 years has passed. Between 3 to 5 years. If you look on the chronology, 3 to 5 years has passed from the first preaching of the gospel at Antioch. Now, let's say 3 years. Now, there were in the church at Antioch prophets and teachers. They were pagans before. Now they became prophets and teachers, new offices in the church, a maturing church. Barnabas, we know. Simeon, we don't know. Lucius, we don't know. Manaen, we don't know. And then, of course, Paul, we know. So now there are 5 leaders in the church there, of which 3 are new. So what happened in the 2 to 3 years that happened? What is the sign of maturity there? Church was not a membership factory. It's a leadership factory. They are producing leaders. Through the teaching, there was maturing of the church. That means new leaders started to manifest. New offices started to manifest. New gifts started to manifest. Now look what happened there. While they were worshiping the Lord and fasting, it's interesting, all of that signs of maturity, okay? And the Holy Spirit said, set apart for me Barnabas and Saul for the work to which I have called them. Then after fasting and praying, they laid their hands on them and sent them off. One of the signs of maturity is you are a sending church. Another sign of maturity is what? You are able to hear the voice of God. Now when they were together fasting and praying and worshiping, no, they didn't get a writing on the wall. No, suddenly the sound system did not speak that. You see the prophetic office there mentioned. The prophetic office functioned, and the Lord spoke through the prophet, and the prophet said, set apart. Now what would we do? Oh, please don't take away Barnabas and Paul. They are the ones who founded us. We cannot. What did they do? What was their response? They got up, they prayed, fasted, prayed, and sent them off. Signs of maturity. All right. Now, from 13:4 onwards, the church enters one of the highest states of maturity for the church. It becomes a mission base. Okay? Mission base. And then this set of scriptures is what we are probably going to study in 24. But I'm just showing to you what we are working on. This is an amazing, I used the word last time in Kannada church. It was not hitting right. I think it should hit here right. How many of you watched Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom? Oh, born and it doesn't matter. An action-packed thriller, okay? Indiana Jones and all is from my time, Bonarity from the next generation, okay? An action-packed thriller. If you want to read, this is action-packed. This is action-packed. It's amazing, those 2 chapters. It is thrilling to see what Paul and Barnabas, the Spirit did through Paul and Barnabas. But you know what? It's not Paul and Barnabas alone. The church at Antioch was partnering with them. The church at Antioch was praying for them. Because you see that at the end in 1428, they come back to Antioch and they report to the church there. And therefore, all that happened in 1304 to 1428 is a work of the Spirit through the church at Antioch. So I would say that would be the ultimate position of maturity of a church. So we have this grand picture for us that when we take our report card, look at what God has prophesied over us, and then we have a template to work with so that where we are deficient, we are able to work with, okay? So let me just go forward. New Life Fellowship is a fantastic Antioch-type church. We are a grow, go, give church. Interestingly, we use the word grow with the Macedonian, go with the Antioch, and give for the, grow with the Jerusalem, go with the Antioch, and give like the Macedonian church. But interestingly, I see all 3 in the Antioch church. They grew. If you can see it, in 11:19 it says, in 11:21 it says, and the hand of the Lord was with them, and they started to increase in number. If you come down to 24, and a great many people were added to the Lord. There was a continuing growth in that church. So I guess they fulfilled the criteria of grow like Antioch church. Go like Antioch church. It's a sending church. We just saw that. And they were giving, because when they became mature, they forgot the iPad, everything, iPhone, everything. They started to think more of others. And they started to be a giving church. So I like the Antioch church because they fulfill all of those 3 things that we talked about. So we have grow like the Jerusalem church. Of course, I'm adding something, and it's very dangerous because it is not even talked earlier. Guard like the efficient church, because that's one of the last things that our pastor Sam spoke to us before he went. Yeah, we miss him, but he started the fire. Now, when we look at the Antioch church and we look at our vision, I think it's powerful. A couple of the elders of the New Life Fellowship Church got together a couple of years back. Pastor Sam put them into the room, gave them good food, and told, you guys need to pray and think about this. And we came up with this. To establish New Life Fellowship churches exist to establish Christ-centered, Spirit-filled, Bible-based churches that grow and multiply across nations so as to transform lives and community. How many of you know this by heart? You're a New Life person. You should know it by heart. Don't you think so? If you're a New Life church member, this is your vision. We need to know this. Every day, we need to live this. And if a church in New Life is not in this realm, then it's no more New Life Fellowship Church. Because if it's a New Life Fellowship Church, it must be establishing Spirit-filled, Bible-based church, Christ-centered churches that grow and multiply across nations so as to transform life and communities. Are we there? We need to keep thinking. That's how we work. So we are committed. This is our mission. But I'd like to focus on this verse. For we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field. You are God's building. I want to take the second imagery that Paul is giving there. The second imagery is the idea of building. Okay, so the idea of building Antioch comes from that. And he says, for we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field, God's building. So we are building Antioch-type churches. According to the grace of God, which was given to me like a wise master builder, building. The whole imagery of building, Paul is building it. Agriculture was done a lot by Jesus. Paul talks more about the building part, okay? I laid a foundation and another is building on it. But each man must be careful how he builds on it, for no man can lay a foundation other than which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. So Paul says he is the master builder. And blueprint was given to him by Jesus. And Paul is given the revelation to build a church. And he really does a fantastic job. And he was one of the master builders in the Antioch church. Now we know the Great Commission. At least we should know. Even if you don't know New Life Vision, you must know this, because this goes beyond New Life. It is encompassing all of the Christian world that we are. And we break it like this. And if you see what the Spirit did with the Jerusalem church, Barnabas and Paul, they fulfilled exactly the Great Commission. Now look at that. Go into all the world and preach the good news. Did they do that? Did that happen in Antioch? Yes. Those who believe baptized, not recorded, but definitely should have happened because already the trend was there. And then they brought them into the church, which you see very clearly, and taught them all that Jesus taught to obey. Now, can you see that happen in the Antioch church? Somebody went and preached the gospel. They were baptized, brought into the church, because it says the word. If you read 9:11, it's so beautiful. You can see unbelievers, then believers, then you can see the word church. Then, of course, a little down, you get disciples, okay? So, disciples are made in the church, not outside the church. Okay? There are many other organizations making disciples. But I think the work was given to the Church of Jesus Christ. Now, we see that in the Antioch church, they spend 1 year, what? Teaching. Is that there in the Great Commission? And did they obey? Yes, because we see the manifestations, right? Now, can you see how the Great Commission was fulfilled in the city of Antioch? It is amazing how this is done. And if you see all through the book of Acts, this was repeated again and again. Okay? Now let's go a little forward. I don't know if you've seen this before. I think I've shown this to you before. Okay? Go to all the nations. This is at the micro level. Okay? This is what church needs to be doing on a daily basis. Go to all the nations. Preach the gospel. It's very small, I think. No? I don't know if you can see it. So the gospel. Baptize people. Teach them the content, which is the first principles. And as you teach them, the mind gets renewed. That means the philosophies of the world, which was already there with us, the I-focused philosophies, is now replaced with the philosophies of Christ. That's a renewing of mind. Once your mind is renewed, you will start to practice because your thinking has changed. So the teachings of Christ starts to manifest in your life, in your behavior, which is nothing but obedience. And therefore, you have a new lifestyle. The first 5 chapters of your first principles. The gospel, water baptism, first principles, renewing your mind, and lifestyle of a disciple. Can you see the Great Commission in that? Are you able to see the Great Commission? That's just the Great Commission. Matthew 28, I've made it into picture. Now, at a macro level, this is what will happen. So Jesus told the Great Commission, manifested in the places like Antioch. At a micro level, this is what the people that God moved did. At a macro level, this is what we see in the book of Acts. What happens? A church is planted. A church is established by the teaching. The church is entrusted to leaders who are developed through the teaching because the manifestation of maturity is in the new leaders produced. And then leaders are sent out and church multiplies. Can you see this happen in Antioch? Brilliantly, amazingly this happens. This has to happen for every church. There is no exception to this. And that was the work of the Spirit as we see. Now when Jesus tells in Matthew 28, go into all we see that as a very small thing, right? We never thought that is what happened in Acts. But if you see now, everything that happened in the book of Acts happened at a micro level, the Great Commission being fulfilled. At a macro level, you see, because of this started to happen. New churches started to. What's the prophecy over you? One of the key statements in the prophecy that was spoken to you. What is that? Lot of churches. We don't have time. He didn't mention time, okay? I'm not looking at the time. It says lots of churches. Did you hear the prophecy? Ask your pastor for the link and keep listening to this. Lots of churches. That means you're going to go through this process in a very powerful way. You've already become 2 churches. It's going to grow and multiply. So Paul used this strategy called the Pauline cycle. And it says that you evangelize strategic cities, establish local churches, and trust to faithful men. The same thing, but written in a different way. At a very, very deep level, this is what happened in Antioch. What happened? Missionaries were commissioned, audience contacted, gospel was communicated, hearers were converted. Converted is a tough word today. Okay. Believers congregated, faith confirmed. That means they were taught. They were taught. Leadership consecrated because they were taught. They grew and the leaders were developed. They were consecrated. Believers were commended. The leaders were established. Relationship continued. That means the people who planted and who moved on, the relationship continued. And these churches became sending churches. And what was the heart of it? The Spirit of God, the divine director of the missionary enterprise. Prayer, the atmosphere. Scriptures, the foundation. Church, the agency. This is what happened in Antioch. This is the work of the Spirit. This is nothing but all of this redone in different formats, how it manifested in the book of Acts. A little bit different done in our context, the way we see it. So the contact, target audience, proclaim the gospel, call for repentance and trust, baptize new believers, incorporate the new believers into the church, strengthen the Christian community, take the Lord's Supper, study the word, pray, minister to others, sing to God, worship, and things like that. Leaders are produced through this process, and then you identify the leaders, you train the leaders, commission the leaders, support the leaders, reconvene leaders, saturate regions with the gospel by planting churches. Saturate the entire Yelahanka, North Bangalore region with the planting of churches. Again, the cycle continues. All right. But do you think this is important? Does this look like something that Jesus has commanded? Let's look at this. If you turn to Luke 1:1-4, it says, so many others have tried their hand at putting together a story of the wonderful harvest of scripture and history that took place among us, using reports handed down by the original eyewitnesses who served this word with their very lives. Since I've investigated all the reports, now Luke is an investigator, okay? He is from a medical background. He is used to diagnosing, okay? Since I've investigated all the reports in close detail, he looked at all the blood reports, starting from the story's beginning, I decided to write it all out for you, most honorable Theophilus, so you can know beyond the shadow of doubt the reliability of what you were taught. That means Theophilus was taught Luke and Acts. But does that change the picture? That makes it very clear that it was part of the curriculum. Every believer went through this process of studying this because every church was to do this. Now, let's look at Acts 1:12. This is part 2 of Luke's writing, okay? In the first book, O Theophilus, I have dealt with all that Jesus began to do and teach until the day when he was taken up after he had given commands through the Holy Spirit to the apostles had chosen. Now, what's the key word here? Remember, what we read was part 1 of Luke's text in Luke 1 onwards. Now we are reading part 2, the first line. What's the key word here? Yes. Everything you read in Luke is only the beginning. It's only the beginning. And we thought everything was there, right? It's only the beginning. Acts is the fulfillment. And it's interesting, Acts doesn't have an end. It's in progress, even now. The Spirit is working the same way as he worked in Acts. That means to say, the Gospels of Luke, whatever is mentioned is only the beginning. And then Jesus continued to do what he was doing in the book of Acts through the apostles, through the churches. Therefore, all that is written in the book of Acts, all that we saw till now, is mandatory. To be taught and to be practiced. I'm just building a case for you to build Antioch type churches. I'm building a case for you to see that your prophecy that God has spoken to you is going to be fulfilled when you respond to the report card. I'm building a case for you for a template to what you need to work with. And that's the journey of Antioch. It's a brilliant journey. I just charted it out. Don't have time to go through that. So the foundation of an Antioch church: turning to the Lord, purpose of heart, willingness to be taught, responsiveness to the Lord, genuine Christianity, an evangelistic church. The 12 characteristics of the Antioch church: an evangelistic church, a teaching church, a multiracial church, a team ministry church, a spirit-anointed church, a prophetic church, a generous church, a worshiping church, a praying church, an equipping church, a world church, a respected church. Those are all pictures. We don't have time to go into all these things. But you can add to this list, okay? There is plenty as you go through the book of this thing. Now, you must remember, the first missionary journey was the beginning of a great enterprise, the gospel enterprise. If you see, and we think it's over with the first missionary journey as far as Antioch is concerned. But if you go to Acts 18, you see after the second missionary journey, Paul came back to Antioch. Antioch was still at work. Still at work. It's a very, very powerful enterprise. And you must remember, a mature church will influence a large geography. A mature church will influence a large geography. 3 missionary journeys. Look at the number of churches he planted. 3 missionary journeys. Plenty of churches. And these are all, what I would say is just a skeleton. Now, Paul in Romans 15 says, "From Jerusalem to Illyricum, I have done my work of the gospel. There is no place left to me." It's a large geography area. Definitely so many areas were not done. But Paul was an apostle. Paul built a framework, built an infrastructure of churches. From there, the churches would influence the whole nations. And because Antioch did what it did, you can see the whole of Europe and a lot of Africa and a lot of, even India was affected by what happened there in this thing. Now, I came from a nominal church background, which is the Malankara Syrian church. Malankara Syrian Marthoma church. That's I was born into that. Where does the word Syrian come from? Where is Antioch? Syria. Can you see the effect of a church called Antioch? Can you see an effect that was there? So, I leave this with you. I leave with you the picture of Antioch. I leave with you the prophecy that was prophesied upon you. I leave with you the idea that there is a report card given to him. I leave with you the template with which you can work. And your influence will be large geography. God bless you.